Welcome to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything under the sun that relates to you having a happier, healthier relationship with money. My name is Steve Sexton, and I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank all our 600,000 plus listeners here in the States and over 50,000 listeners overseas. We appreciate you listening, sharing it with your friends and family. You know what? Definitely talking about your money today. You know what? Wealth managers, financial advisors, and their clients are all waiting the latest tax breakdown. You know, when the federal government's still trying to figure out how to pay for all that money. We've received reduced budget as we speak. Congress, the Senate, and the White House are arguing over once it's passed. Whatever form it passes is going to have an effect on us all. We have Denny Artache here, financial advisor, author, mentor, and entertainer, to help us understand what's going on. I'm also going to be talking all about the IRAs, the SEP IRAs, traditional and Roth IRAs. It's an IRA day, so we're going to be talking about that. Next up, right now, you know what? Corporations are having a hard time filling jobs after the global health crisis. Left a lot of people unemployment, as well as a completely redefined workers' idea of job security and ultimately the meaning of life and working. Instead of working for big company contracts, many want to launch their own entrepreneurial dreams or dabble in the freelance world, paralleling the uncertain economy that's driving people towards self-employment. Young grads who can't find work in the area they want also have a unique opportunity to delve straight from a student to an entrepreneur. Where do business beginners get started, and what businesses are needing right now? Don't worry, we have Athan Slotkin, the Shadow CEO, will share his top 5 tips for how to start a new business. Now, with that, I want to thank Athan for being on the show today. Athan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You know what? Let's just start a little bit with, tell us your story, because I'd love to hear how you got the nickname, the Shadow CEO.
Yeah, for sure. So, my background, I started in management consulting, went into the corporate, to grad school, went into the corporate world. And while I was in the corporate world, I was always kind of creating my own businesses on the side. So at this point, I've created all sorts of businesses, some that have been successful, some that I tested and I didn't like what I saw and I kind of pushed them aside, and, all the way across different industries and things like that. People kind of caught wind of that and started to ask for help with their businesses. Fast forward to, 2017, 18, 19, the rise of the digital economy, freelance economy. It just kind of became more of a thing, to be honest with you. So now, I spend my time, at least like 90% of it, working with entrepreneurs around the world in all kinds of businesses at all different stages, to problem solve, basically, right? To figure out what the appropriate strategy is for their business. And sometimes also package it up too. Sometimes people need, business plans and models and things to present and that kind of a thing. But I kind of work behind the scenes with these entrepreneurs to get them to where they want to go to. And as for the name, that just came from a client, actually. I didn't come up with it myself, funny enough. But I think it's pretty befitting. So I kind of just ran with it.
Okay, great. Well, it's better than my nickname in grade school is Gumpy, because I could touch my palms to the floor. So, hey, my first big question is this. When people walk into, hey, I want to start a business, I want to run a business. You know what? Now they're the CEO, the chief operating officer, the manager of operations. And you know what? A lot of times people make mistakes that they just, just because they don't know what they don't know. And you know what? I know you've done these talks before about some of the biggest mistakes CEOs make and how to avoid them. Could you share some of those before we go into those 5 tips?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the absolute first thing I would actually say is what's almost most crucial is understanding 2 things, really understanding the numbers of your business, the underlying numbers, and the dynamics that exist as well, right? So by underlying numbers, you need to understand a couple of things there. One, like, what are the underlying, sometimes people will use the term unit economics, right? So if you're selling a product or a service, how much can you sell it for? How much does it cost you to be able to deliver it, right? You need to understand those economics really, really well and how they could potentially shift, right? But then beyond that, you need to figure out how you're, beyond just on the unit basis, how the overall operational expenses impact your business and how much scale you need to get to overcome that, basically. And as a result of that, what your pathway is forward to be able to get to that point of profitability, right? And so understanding those levers really clearly inside and out, not just for your business, but any business you're considering, is really crucial, because I think it will, no projections are perfect ever, right? I mean, if anything, it's the farthest thing from the case. The only thing is that whatever you project is not what's going to happen, right? But on the same token, it's a pretty good illustrative in terms of like the volatility that exists in the business and where the business could potentially go and what kind of trajectory you'd have. The reason that's important, is because not all businesses are remotely created equal, and not all entrepreneurs are created equal, right? So with that in mind, you have to have a match that exists between what you're interested in, what the risk profile and financial profile is of the business, and what you and that matching up, basically, so you could pick the appropriate business, right? And so it's, there's this term that exists that's called ikigai, right? Which is like the crossover between what you're interested in and what could make you money and where you're skilled and all those kinds of things. And it's that kind of premise that exists here. You have to find the perfect match for you in terms of what the right business is to create. And there's no one answer, right? I mean, of course, everybody, if you're just asking them at face value, says they want a business that makes, trillions of dollars, and that's that, right? And that sounds great and all, of course, right? However, that may come with a bigger risk profile potentially, and you may, any given entrepreneur may not want that. So definitely have to understand the numbers and have to understand what the possible trajectory is of the business and what that pathway is there. Only then are you, best informed to decide whether you like this or whether you want to instead try something else out potentially.
Okay, I think that's unbelievably important, because if you don't understand those things, your business is probably not going to succeed. And I've seen many people who have parents who've decided to fund their kids' aspirations of a restaurant or some sort of business, only to have it fail 6 to 9, 12 months later. And you've probably seen this before too, but it's just not having a firm grasp on that. And the problem is most parents don't know what they don't know. They just want to help their kid. And I've seen people's retirement savings partially go down the drain because of things like that.
Yep, that's 100% correct. I think that's right, and I think it's plannable to some extent. Not everything is perfectly plannable in business, as we know, right? Things come up, COVID comes up, right? There's some anomalies that certainly happen, but for the most part, a lot of it is plannable, and you can kind of predict it if you just got to take a little bit of time to kind of analyze and plan at the beginning. You don't have to take it too far. You don't have to overbeat it, because there's only so far you can take it. But making an informed decision, you can almost think of it as like insurance, basically, for your life and for your time and money and otherwise, where you put in 1, 2, 3 weeks to be able to analyze something. You'll have a better picture of it, and then you can go ahead still. I mean, if you want to go ahead, that's perfectly fine. But oftentimes what I find is that people are so enthusiastic and excited about starting a new business or developing a new line within the business, or a new business unit, and they're nervous that somebody else is going to swoop in and copy their idea or take it. I mean, the fact of the matter is that most markets that exist have multiple players in it, right? It's not like a winner take all market to begin with. So oftentimes I feel like people may overestimate that to some extent. If you
Mhm.
can remember that that's the case and get comfortable with it, you're not going to, 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to plan something. It's not going to make a difference for you. You'd be actually far better off, because what you're giving up in the beginning, you'll have in not just like mindfulness, but also in planning, strategic planning as well. So you know exactly where you need to go.
Mhm.
So it's very valuable investment, regardless.
Bottom line is, it's going to save you money now and make you money later.
Yeah, I mean, it may cost you a little bit of time or money, right? One or the other in the short term, but it will repay itself. And if nothing else, not just in money, but also your sanity, probably.
Well, as somebody who has developed, not like you, but I've done some stuff internationally before, and we were always so very, very, very tight with our numbers, and we knew exactly what we were going to do at what stage and the whole shot. We knew what different things in the marketplace that could affect us and how things were changing. So, for example, you remember, was it Blockbuster Video?
Yeah.
For a while there, the cat's meow. And now there's only one store left, and that's because they became a dinosaur. But they had actually had the opportunity to buy Netflix. Is that right? That might I
I
heard
think it was
that.
super. I think it was super cheap actually at one point, right?
Yeah.
I think they very much had an opportunity. They almost, if you remember back at the initial form factor of it, right, was discs in the mail, right? That was the evolution that happened, right? It went from discs in store, tapes in store, discs in store, to discs in the mail, and they actually competed with them on that, right? Because both Netflix and Blockbuster had the discs in the mail subscription-based program that existed.
Mhm.
It was the migration to digital that was obviously what really tipped it over at the end of the day.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. At that early point, they did have the option to
Oh,
purchase, but it's not limited to them. There's plenty of other stories too, right? As we know that exist where companies had an option to purchase something at a tremendous discount and didn't. There's probably some bias in that too, right? Because I'm sure there are also plenty of opportunities they pass on that are looking pretty good right now too.
mhm.
But yeah,
Oh yeah, no, you know what, you see it all. All I'm saying is, you know what, if you're doing this, you want to have a little vision of what you think is going to happen down the road when you're looking at those numbers, and a lot of it has to do with the risk, because there's people that, you know what, 2 months before COVID, they started a health gym,
yeah,
and you know what, they're completely shut down or doing it in their garage.
yeah.
So just things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come right back and we're going to talk about those 5 tips that are very, very important. So stick with us. We'll be right back with more Athan Slotkin. This is about 20 seconds.
Sounds good.
Because all the commercials and ins and outs get added a little bit
Yeah,
later.
that makes sense.
Okay,
Sounds
so
good.
I have my own little commercial, and then we're going to go right into the 5 tips, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Sounds good.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, welcome back. This is Steve Sexton. I'm here with Athan Slotkin. Again, this whole show is about thriving and surviving within COVID here. Now, I want to just say briefly, I truly thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you letting your friends and family and associates know about the show. All the replays are available at savingwithsteve.us. That's savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful information, insight on Saving with Steve, then I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll never miss a show. Check out a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio New York City, E360 TV, and Las Vegas TV networks. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of financial and personal freedom. Also, follow us at Facebook at Saving with Steve Sexton. You can go to the Insiders Club. Again, go to savingwithsteve.us. You can get replays, exclusive gifts from our guests, and so on. So, Athan, welcome back, because I've been actually really excited about this, that you're coming here, because I want to talk about these 5 tips.
Yeah,
There's so many people that have a business. Some of them have been fighting it out. They're upset at, you know what, who's ever the politician in place.
yeah,
And you know what, the reality is they just need to find a way to pivot.
yeah,
And I thought the 5 tips that you have to help people survive through, the first lockdown, the second lockdown, and so on is key. So let's
yeah.
talk through those 5 tips that you have for thriving and surviving and thriving through the lockdowns. And I have a feeling we're going to be semi-lockdown for the next 6 months or so. Is that
Yeah.
about right? So you know what? Go ahead. It's all up to you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Sounds good. So I think, I think there's a couple of things that we'll talk about, right? Like, I definitely think there's an opportunity to semi-pivot. I think in some cases there's even opportunity to completely pivot. But I also think there's the opportunity to focus on your core business and adapt to what's happening right now, right? So first and foremost, I think you said it really, really well, Steve, that, many business owners may be really frustrated these days, right? At whomever the politician is. We hear a lot of stories of that, but that's not necessarily the customer, right? And the customer at the end of the day has to feel, like always, like they're being taken care of. And this doesn't matter if you have a B2C business for consumers, B2B business for business, it doesn't matter, right? The customer has to feel like they're being taken care of. And these days, what's on those consumers' minds? What's on those consumer minds is safety at the end of the day. So you have to make sure that you're not just catering to that, over catering to that. And that's agnostic of what your own beliefs are, right? Even if you think it's a little bit unnecessary, and even if there is some large segment of people who are out there, and this is not necessarily correlated politically, right? But there's some large segment of customers out there who want to feel like they're really comfortable and safe. And that's always the case. It's just changed a little bit in form. And so again, the message there is put aside your own personal beliefs about it or political beliefs about it and over account for something like that right now, because it's almost like, the entryway to get people even into your store or your location, or depending upon what your business is, to start. And obviously that presumes, we're focusing a bit more on brick and mortar businesses as we're saying that. But the
Mhm.
concept of making sure your customers are comfortable and you're cognizant of what's on their mind, the same thing applies, right? So if it applies for a digital business, it's mental health and making sure that they have someone there that they can trust. And that always exists. But again, it's probably further magnified right now. So you just have to be very, very cognizant right now of making your customers comfortable.
I actually have my wife, we were just talking last night. It was very interesting because she went to this business to get service, and the person that she was with that was servicing her was wearing a mask, and so was she. But the other people that were there a little bit younger, they weren't. And she
Yep.
goes, I think it's time for me to get to find a new person. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, it is so true because I've heard that from other people that just they're just concerned because they don't want to get it. They've heard too many bad stories on the news.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of like a lowest common denominator situation, right? Like inherently, if we're talking about like in person, right, and people getting sick with COVID, that kind of a thing, it's going to have to therefore cater to the person who's more cautious, right? So you as the business owner, you have to kind of cater a little bit more to that person because the other person who's not as concerned about it is by definition not as concerned about it, right? So you have to cater to that lesser, that lower common denominator person. Just make sure everybody's comfortable at the end of the day. And I think sometimes it puts business owners I've seen in uncomfortable situations where they have to speak up and say something, and nobody knows really what to say these days and how to say it in the right way. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, I'll say. But as long as you're enforcing that this is for everybody's good, and in to make sure that you can stay open and have a healthy environment, I think if you focus on the prize, it kind of segues in pretty well, in fact, which is another tip of mine, in fact, is push your political beliefs aside. And I just want to detail that out a little bit more. I don't just mean that in like the in person or kind of live sense, but more specifically, we have social media everywhere, right? And so if you're speaking either as an individual or on behalf of your business, so for instance, if you're posting online on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, right? Whether it's your business's handle that's actually posting, or it's you connected to your business, because everyone knows who's connected to businesses these days. It's not that hard to figure out who's an owner of a business. You have to realize that you're representing your business at the end of the day, right? Like your business doesn't have a political party. That's the fact of the matter. You're trying to engage in commerce and deliver good products and services to your customers is what you're trying to do. It's just, it winds up being a bit of a strategic question at the end of the day. Generally speaking, my philosophy is don't bring politics into business. You're trying to maximize what your potential customer base, and that's that. I have seen some cases where people are very, very polarized on politically, and that's a business strategy because they know that yes, they're going to lose this huge segment of people, but they're going to very much gain these, this other segment of people. But you'd have to be really pointed in terms of what your strategy is to be able to pull something like that off. So absent that, I would just stay away from politics as it relates to social media and person in general, and just kind of conduct business and be the awesome business owner delivering the awesome service and product that you offer at the end of the day.
So what about, maintaining touch points with customers?
Yeah. So that's extremely important. As people are farther at this point, right? And so in the old world, let's call it, right? If you were a local business, for instance, you'd have people come in more frequently, you'd have people roaming, you'd have more foot traffic, right? I think this kind of magnifies the need to make sure you have a really good digital strategy. It existed there before COVID, right? Like COVID wasn't what started digital strategy, right? COVID was a catalyst that maybe expanded it a little bit more and accelerated it. We have to, as business owners, really understand that. And yes, I know you can, outsource it and give it to an agency or someone to manage it. You should understand this, the nuance quite well as a business owner as well, even if you're not physically taking on the task, because you have to understand how to point the direction, how it connects to your strategy, and what success metrics are as well. So you really have to ramp up on digital. Fortunately for us, we have excellent tools that exist. We have 5, 10, 15 different social media platforms. We have online learning that exists with YouTube and Udemy, and all these different course tools that exist that you don't have to pay much for at all. Put in a little bit more energy and time and ramp up on that soon, because if as a business owner, agnostic of what business you're in, you don't understand how e-commerce functions and how digital marketing functions and how social media connects to email, and email flows and different pathways for customers. If you don't understand that, that's where the trend was going anyway, right? It's just accelerating right now, and your business is going to inevitably have to go in that direction, right? So, there's two scenarios that exist. Either we go back to somewhat normal, right? Let's say, or anything even close to it. Okay, you're not in a worse position for that. You're still going to need some component of digital strategy, right? Or alternatively, it shifts increasingly more to digital, and this is a sustained behavior, which is probably somewhat the more likely of the two, I would say. You're going to need to have these skills, whether you do it yourself as a solopreneur or otherwise, you need to have these skills. So,
Well, I agree with that, because if you don't understand how it works and you're spending money on it, you can be spending a lot of money on something that doesn't work properly and you don't know
yeah,
why.
yeah,
And the more you do, the better. So
yeah.
let's talk about partnering.
Yeah, so I think this is a good idea in general, right? But I think now particularly there's a good rally angle that could exist, right? Because you have many businesses around you that are in a similarly uncomfortable position, right? And so what you have as assets is two things, right? You have two independent bases that exist. Maybe there's a little bit of overlap, but two independent customer bases that exist. And you have the ability to put together a collaboration that could make the overall product that much richer as well. You see it with all brands, brands everywhere that are doing this. You saw this with McDonald's recently, connecting with Travis Scott and having like a Travis Scott line. Those Travis Scott's a rapper. Connecting that to McDonald's just to create a really cool item to get people through the door and be buzzworthy. One wouldn't normally think to connect those two necessarily, right? It's not about that. It's about creating something interesting that people are excited about in a packaged way. And then on top of it, as two separate businesses, you both have customer lists that could exist. So you could easily help each other by creating this collective product that's incredible and pushing out to your respective bases to be able to both garner new customers. It could be a really excellent strategy. And oh yeah, by the way, that gets further magnified and enriched as expand out to 3 partners and 4 partners, and you're really connecting. It can make everybody stronger.
So you're basically just talking about cross-pollination here and just building a um, bigger audience, which is wonderful. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
bigger audience and creating these more dynamic offerings that could exist by taking 2 offerings and pushing them together, and you could potentially brand it as something that's very relevant for people. There's just a lot of creative angles you can take, even when you meet as partners on top of the lists like you're talking about and cross pollination. Oftentimes you can come up with even more creative solutions to be able to serve your customers. So sometimes it just sprouts excellent outcomes as well.
Now, so basically what you're telling us is you want to make sure your customers are safe, cater to them. You want to make sure you maintain those touch points with those customers. You don't want to worry, you forget about your political beliefs. Don't bring it in there, because all it's going to do is hurt. And then partnering is gigantic, because it can cross-pollinate and grow your business more so than what you're doing right now. And understanding personally the digital side of things, so you can really make a difference with the technology that's moving forward in this environment, or that's being pushed forward in this environment.
Yeah, you nailed it. And that last one, if it were me, everyone's busy, right? And especially these days, we're trying to figure out how to best maximize our time while keeping our mental health in order and all that good stuff. But I'm doing that last one about the studying and ramping up on digital marketing and whatever other gaps I have. I'm doing that this Saturday if I don't have that knowledge at this point. I mean, you need to get it in your mind, because having it in your mind subconsciously is then going to translate to strategy for whatever you do, whether you stay with your core business, whether you migrate it to digital, or whether you see another angle for a completely different business where you have some kind of competency for. It's going to play in at that point. So you need to somehow get that knowledge into your mind so it could affect your strategy.
Athan, thank you for being on the show. Now, if somebody is looking to start a business, needs your help, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, they can just find me on athanslotkin.com. When your name is Athan Slotkin, it's not too hard to procure assets.
It's like the last name Sexton. Nobody forgets it.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to thank you for joining us today. You've imparted some wonderful information to help people survive COVID and thrive COVID. So I wish you continued success, health, and I want to appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, Steve.
All right. Hey, we'll let you go. We'll see you.
See you, Steve. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to the Saving with Steve show. This is where we talk about the ins and outs of money. Yes, the ins and outs of money. I truly thank you for tuning in, and I appreciate you letting your friends and family and associates know about the show. All the replays are available at www.savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful information and insight on Saving with Steve, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss a show. Check out a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio New York City, You know what? All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal and financial freedom. Now, if you have a topic in mind, just like we had last time, we had Brent Caspers, the family law attorney that specializes in divorce and taxes. He's a CPA. You know what? We had over 100,000 people want to have that topic. So I hope it was beneficial to you. Now I'm going to be talking about the ins and outs of IRAs and 401ks and all that kind of good stuff. So first of all, a couple big things. What does an IRA, a SEP IRA, or a 401k do for you? All it really allows you to do is you get a tax deduction on the money you put in there. Okay, that means the money doesn't get taxed. And then you can invest it in anything from an annuity to life insurance, annuity, not life insurance, but CDs. You could put stocks in there, the whole shop. Okay, but what it allows to occur is your money consistently will grow. Okay, you earn interest on the interest. You earn interest on the money you should have paid taxes, and it continues to defer all until you decide to start taking money out. If you take out money before 59 and a half, unless you have a specific reason, you're going to have a 10% withdrawal penalty. So besides paying the tax, you're going to have to, pay an extra 10%. Now, you can take out as much or as little as you want, but at the age of 72, you're going to have to take what's called a required minimum distribution. And what they're going to do is on December 31st of every year, they're going to calculate whatever total you have, and then they're going to give you a withdrawal factor. So at 72, that withdrawal factor is 25.6. So if you have $100,000, you divide it by 25.6, you're going to have to take out about $3,900. Yeah, about 4%. And each year, that withdrawal rate's going to get larger and larger and larger all the way until you're 115 and you have to take out everything. So that's the basics of an IRA. That's the basics of a 401k. That's the basics of a SEP IRA. But let's talk about the use of each one. Now, if you are a self-employed person, okay, and you want to start contributing to money, or your employer doesn't have a 401k program, you can set up an individual IRA, which enables you to contribute up to about $6,000. Okay. If you're over the age of 50, they'll allow you to create 1,000 more so you can catch up. All right. Now, that's an individual IRA. If you get a 401k, you'll be able to put in $19,500. Now, this is a smart thing about the 401ks and the IRAs. So if you set up an automatic distribution from your payroll to your 401k, you can set it and forget it. And that's probably the best way to do this. That way you can invest in certain stocks and things like that and just keep buying there, keep buying in there, keep buying in there. So when the market goes down, it's actually your friend, because you can buy things at a discount. Because when you look at retirement and IRAs and 401ks, they're all about accumulating assets. Yeah, you're going to have to pay taxes on the money you take out in the future. But you know what? If you've got 50 years to put money in there, you got a long time to accumulate. You got a long time to put money in there. You got a long time to create a retirement nest egg. Now, a SEP IRA. Now, if you're self-employed, if you have a business that will not provide a 401k, you can set up a SEP IRA. You can put in as little as $19,500 or as much as 25% of your annual income in there, which means you can put a maximum about $56,000 in there, which is wonderful. Okay. And you can get a tax deduction for that. So for some people, hey, if I have a $250,000 income and I put $50,000 into a SEP IRA, that's $50,000 I don't have to pay taxes on that year. Not a bad situation. Are you following me? Now, there's also Roth IRAs. A Roth IRA is very cool. Why? Because you have the ability to put money that you've already paid taxes on in it, and then can consistently contribute and contribute and contribute. And that money will grow tax-free for whenever you want to take it out. Now, you have to keep in mind that it's 5 years from the deposit you make. So if you make a deposit this year, in 5 years, you have the ability to take out all the interest tax-free. But if you take it out before that, you're going to pay interest on that $5,000. So you know what? One of the things that people want to take a look at now, especially since most people expect taxes to go up, is to look at ways to strategically and tactically convert your IRA dollars into a Roth. That way you don't have to worry about paying taxes in the future on your RMDs, especially when that balance is larger. Secondly, one of the things you want to look out for, depending upon your situation, if, for example, I have a client who has, Social Security pensions. I've been working with him for 12 years, and we talked to him about taking his IRA and slowly but surely converting it to a Roth so he wouldn't have to pay more in taxes. And I even showed him how he would pay less in taxes now and he'd have a higher balance. And, in his situation, he always had so much money coming in and wasn't spending it all, but he hated paying taxes. So what he did for the last 12 years is he didn't want to do anything with it to convert it to an IRA, to a Roth IRA. And as a result, he got his, he turned 72, got his required minimum distribution statement, and it told him he had to take out $60,000. And it just put him up 2 tax brackets. You know what? He said, I wish I'd listened to you. So folks, pay heed to this. The other thing that's important to understand is the Secure Act. When you take a look at the Secure Act, it does affect all qualified plans. That's the IRAs, the SEP IRAs, the 401ks, and all that stuff. And it says that when mom and dad pass away, the son or daughter is going to inherit that IRA. And when they inherit it, as opposed to taking out a little bit every year in a required minimum distribution for an inherited IRA and then passing out to their kids, which was a stretch, that's gone. Now you have to take out a distribution every year, but by the end of 10 years, you have to liquidate the whole thing. I have a family that, they're 53 years old, mom and dad passed away from COVID, and they got $1 million. Sounds like a lot of money. But anyway, we've cut it. It won't enable them to retire. And on top of that, because of their incomes and the fact they have to support 4 kids, and you're adding $250,000 onto another $120,000 they have to take out each year from the, quote unquote IRA. You know what? That puts them up a couple tax brackets. And as a result, they're going to end up paying a significant amount of money, almost 55% of it, to taxes. So it won't enable them to retire, but it creates a problem. So if you're in one of those situations where you want to make sure the ones that you love will not get put in a position where they have to pay a ton of taxes on the IRA when they inherit it, you might consider looking at a Roth IRA conversion strategy or a life insurance type strategy where you can take tax-free income. And if you pass away, everybody receives it tax-free. So those are some of the things you probably want to look at. Now, I want to thank you for being part of the Saving with Steve show today. It's very, very important. We got a wonderful segment coming up next with Denny Artache talking about, all the impacts of taxes and what you can do. So stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Saving with Steve. Hey, I want to welcome you back to the Saving with Steve show. My name is Steve Sexton, and we're talking about the ins and outs of money. Now, here's one of the big things. We've seen this $3.5 million spending plan. In fact, Congress, the Senate, the White House, they're fighting back and forth. I don't know if it's going to be $3.5 million, but you know what? It's going to affect us all. And you know what? Here's one of the big things. A lot of people are trying to make decisions right now. They're trying to figure out which way to go with their taxes. And we have Denny Artache, financial advisor, author, mentor, entertainer. He has a radio show. He's here to help us understand this whole thing. Now, Denny, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Steve. Nice talking with you. And it's too bad we can't air the outtakes we had 5-10 minutes prior to the show.
Don't worry, they will be. Because that's what goes on Facebook and people.
That's how the cookie crumbles, baby, just like Walter Cronkite says.
Well, the reality is everybody loves the Facebook stuff, and it's usually months on end. We still see people visiting it, and it's almost like watching the Housewives of whatever. I mean, there's not a lot of drama there, but people like to see what's there. But you know what? Before we get started, I got to ask this question because this is one of the things that come up with our viewers things. And I know you've answered it 100 times, but what people really don't know that are listening, and we have, almost 700,000 people who are listening here. Denny was the lead singer and guitarist for the band Iron Butterfly in the 90s when he lived in LA. He toured with musicians like Three Dog Night, famous act like Nick Dolans, Davy Jones from the Monkey, Dennis Yokes from the classic Four Rare Earth, Steppenwolf, which I love, Badfinger, Eric Burden, The Animals, REO Speedwagon, Night Ranger. And you still go out there and gig right now in Florida too, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I just won the local competition. I'm going back to Memphis in January to compete internationally for the International Blues Conference doing original blues. So I still perform. My clients get a big kick out of this. In fact, a lot of them have Googled me and said, hey, dude, do you want to talk about this background of yours? So, I still perform. I even do, to my late dad, I sing Sinatra music.
Oh, cool.
But you know, I love the rock and roll and I like the blues. So yes, I'm still active and I do it. It's not what I do to pay my bills. Imagine that, a musician with not much money.
Well, gee, I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, exactly right. But you know, I flipped the switch in the 90s when my best friend was Joe Shermy from Three Dog Night, and he was sleeping on my couch, and we were eating Jack in the Box double cheeseburgers for 99 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, if this guy with platinum records is sleeping on my couch, I probably should do something else for a living. I love Joe. I mean, I love all the musicians I played with, but I've got to tell you, it's that old story. They were terrible with money. So my passion became showing people how to make their money last, educating them. I'm a non-sugarcoating straight shooter. I mean, I tell people like it is and they make their own decisions. And that is motivating. Best way to be. So, but I still love music. Yes. Just
Perfect.
don't make it.
No, you know, you have a unique transition. You know, I know you're in the Army and all that stuff, but the transition from musician to financial planner, it's just, you go from a creative mind to a linear mind. It's just a little, you know, my family's mostly engineers.
You have to be kind of creative with people because we're still talking about people's lives. And you know, the thing is, I think what has made me successful is, number one, I have a lot of great partners. It's not just me.
Oh yeah,
but,
always that.
You know, I really communicate simply with clients so that they understand things, so that they really can make their own decisions. And I try and make them not to press the panic button because as we discussed it, the media loves to press the panic button, and everything that's going on right now is pressing the panic button. But on my radio show today, I had Paul Meeks. He's a world famous chartered financial analyst. He ran the largest technology fund for Merrill Lynch. He is now with Independent Solutions. I'm partnered with them. I have money managed with them. He's still bullish in spite of the fact of the tax things that are going on, in spite of many worldly things that people think. Look, let's face it, the market has been going up for the last couple of years. It can't continue. There are going to be blips along the radar. Mm-hmm. However, fundamentally, equities still look attractive for single to small, double-digit returns in the long haul. And we don't try and time the market or guess what the Fed's going to do. And the other thing is, I know we're going to talk about the tax situation because it is important, but really, monetary policy by the Feds is what really governs and dictates where the market's going to go, not a president and their policies. It certainly can influence it, but as long as rates are where they are and certain things are keep going along, there's really no need to press the panic button until something new comes in the radar.
Well, let's chat a little bit about that before we get into the other things, because you heard about what's going on in China with Evergrande and their $300 billion loans and all that stuff. And China says, hey, we're not going to step in and bail them out and all that stuff. Did you talk with that about with your guest?
He did mention that he thinks it's a situation that will be resolved, just like he found it almost comical that it seems like clockwork. They always come up with this debt ceiling crisis and they wait for the last few hours to figure it out. So I did ask him, well, what if they don't agree on the debt ceiling? Do you think the markets will go spiraling? And he doesn't feel, Paul Meeks doesn't feel exactly that, well, certainly it's going to sour investor sentiment. I certainly also believe that the trillions of dollars that they're going to pass could affect many things and ultimately lead to higher taxes. I mean, President Biden is already talking about raising capital gains all the way up to possibly 43%. He's also talking about and who knows what will be passed. He's also talking about possibly changing Roth conversions if you're making X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
So that can certainly affect, but I try and caution people not to panic as of yet until we know. I mean, Steve, do you think it's a reality that no matter where the tax situation is, that most people with good tax professionals figure it out eventually, if not sooner?
Oh yeah.
So, whatever they pass, tax professionals will figure out either loopholes or certain ways that they can overcome the new legislation. That is the reality. That is the truth. Just like when markets make strong corrections, and they could be for good reasons and they could be for bad reasons. The last biggest one was 2008, which was a horrible situation. But for investors that were maybe investing for 10, 15, 20 years, they were better suited than those who were retiring within the 2 to 3 years of that happening. And my answer to that is you should have prepared for it. I certainly treat clients differently when they're within 5 years of retiring as opposed to 20 years of retiring, because we don't know what the market's going to do with absolute certainty. There's a lot of speculation, even though stocks are moderately overvalued at this point. There's still there's, according to Paul Meeks and people a lot smarter than I, there's still a good deal going forth the next 12 to 18 months and beyond. I don't think people should go crazy and load up on technology right now, but for the value investor and for those investing the next 10, 15, 20 years, it's almost like that old saying that if you have favorite companies and they go on sale, do you abandon them or do you buy them more when they're cheaper? So if you're investing for the longer haul, I would say that would trigger buying, not selling at that point.
So, you know what? We're going to take a quick break right now and come back because I want to keep going on that topic because I think it's unbelievably important. So, hey, look, we have Denny right with us. You want to stick with us? We're going to be right back. Cameron, we just finished segment number 4. We're going to move into segment number 5. And give me about 10 seconds.
We're all the way up to 4?
Oh, there was 3 segments before you.
Oh, I got you. I see.
So yeah, we have an hour-long show, and this all gets edited and distributed. Your show will actually be seen 9 times over the next 10 weeks.
When will it first be that I'll be able to see it?
11 days from day on Tuesday at 11 a.m. You'll get the schedule. You'll get the unedited as well as the edited segments. So you can tear it up any way you like.
Sounds like you should be on my radio show, but I don't know if you get up that early. My show's at 9 in the morning. You're probably still.
I'm in that case. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm up at 5. So.
Okay. Well, I'm usually at the gym myself around 6 o'clock or 5:30. So I'll never get it done if I don't do it that early.
Oh, same here. Otherwise, I don't want to do it at night. So here we go. Hey, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money. I truly want to thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you letting your friends, family, and associates know about the show. All the replays are available at www.savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful information and insight on Saving with Steve, then I encourage you to subscribe for our Google Play, our Spotify channel. Now, to check out a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio in New York City, E360 TV, Las Vegas TV Network. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of financial personal freedom. Hey, Cameron, could you edit that a little bit? Now, we have Denny. Could you say your name one more time?
Denny Artache. I've been called work. No matter what comes out of your mouth.
With us, and we've been talking about the things that people need to keep in mind when they're looking at this $3.5 trillion spending package. One of the questions that I have for Denny is this: you know what? Well, there's a lot of people feel there's going to be some fallout, whether positively or negatively. Okay. And you know what, if it's negatively and then we see the market go down and you've got people, and I know you work with people in the school systems and things like that. And you know what, if you're 24, 25, 26, 30, 35, do you freak out and take things out of the market, or do you let it continue and invest even more because you know what, well, I look at it as you're buying things at discount, but so I'd love to hear your input on that.
That's an excellent question. Just remember that no one can time the market. So it's really based on risk tolerance. A lot of my clients, we go through sophisticated software and we run the risk tolerance, but I dumb it down. I look them in the eye and say, John, Jill, what would you feel like if your value went down for 30% or more? And I see what their reaction is. And at any given time, if that's not good for a person, they need to be really careful on how they invest, because the fact of the matter is that could happen. It happened last year during the COVID crisis. The market was down about 35%. Now, who would have thought that it would have recovered as fast as it did? So those who panicked at that time missed the ability to not have lost money because they sold out of their positions. So it really, time is your friend in the market, and also risk tolerance. It's very interesting, Steve, that in the last 21 years, if you break down what the S&P has averaged, including the 2008 crisis, it's probably somewhere around 5.5%. Now, I know that doesn't sound sexy, but compound interest is amazing, as Einstein used to say. So I really feel that people should not try and time the market, but they should pay attention to risk tolerance, because at any given time, the markets move so fast now. If you cannot stomach being down 20, 30, or possibly 40%, then you should rebalance your portfolio. If you're closer to retirement, you should have it in positions that maybe you're okay making 3 to 4%. And you're not going to get upset that the market made 20, because you have other plans for it in 3 years when you retire. But if we take that away, if you know you're going to be in the market, even in retirement, then maybe you wouldn't even do that. You would continue plugging along in a moderately conservative, well-balanced, diversified portfolio. And over time, you should be rewarded. But I have to tell you, you have to be able to stomach the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of the market. They are a natural progression. What we've had in the last 4 to 5 years, I consider not natural. It's been more bullish rather than bearish. And so people have the mindset that, well, if I can't make 20%, then what's the point? Or, hey, the market's going to continue going up and the music's playing, everyone's dancing. It's great. That's not really what true financial planners want their clients to believe. It's not reality. We've had a great run. Could it continue? Yes. I think sentiment is, as long as interest rates are where they are and that the economy keeps going and we don't have things like what we have in China, another war, perhaps a debt crisis, that will keep plugging along, and single to low double-digit returns is very achievable. This is not to say that we can't have a 5 to 10% correction in the next 6 months or more. So I really believe in my heart of hearts, time is your friend, and risk tolerance will help you stomach what the market does.
That's wonderful advice. Now, when it comes to the tax side of things, what are you currently advising clients to do?
Well, that opens up a lot of things, because first of all, people do the opposite. They tend to take Social Security early and defer their retirement accounts, when from a taxation standpoint, they should do the opposite, because Social Security is more favorably taxed. But that's a whole discussion that we could spend an hour on. What I would say, when you say taxation, I do believe, because of the spending and the new administration, that taxes will go up. They're talking about changing the brackets as it is. I don't know if they'll touch the standard deduction that President Trump did, which was a gift for many. When they say that only rich people benefited, I ask a couple point blank, so that $24,000 standard deduction didn't help you. And they say, well, yeah, of course it did. So you have to look at bits and pieces. Now, if inflation gets out of control, and wage inflation is a big, big thing that we have to watch, and if they do indeed raise corporate tax rates, then that may change some business structures where they may go overseas, which will affect employment, which may affect monetary policy, which means that we could see a rise in interest rates. And then once things start tightening, if they do, then and a lot of it is predicated on where taxes are going. Well, because they're spending, I said it on my show, Drunken Sailors on Shore Leave, to coin a phrase, it has to be paid somehow, sometime.
Mhm.
And the only solution is obviously to raise taxes. That's how they pay for, we've had rates, I don't want to say artificially held down, but boy, I wouldn't want to be the first guy that wants to raise interest rates in this environment when people have been spoiled for the last few years. But these are all normal progressions of any economy. Rates cannot stay where they are.
No.
Taxes probably, they should not stay where they are. They cannot because of the expenditures that are happening. So as individuals, you have to be smart. If you can invest in Roth accounts, unfortunately, because rates are where they are, tax-free municipal bonds are not that attractive. And as rates go higher, that will affect, of course, your principal. So I would say a true plan to deal with the taxation, if you're self-employed, you can take advantage of SEP IRAs, defined benefit plans, instead of being stuck with a $5,000 a year. If you're making good money and are self-employed and you can put away 25% of your earnings and pay yourself instead of the IRS. Uh-oh, did I say that bad word, the IRS? That'll save you in taxes alone. But I think going forward, when taxes are going where we don't think they are and certain things are going, it gets, sorry about that. My phone is not.
That's why we have editing.
Yes.
Cameron will get that one, don't worry.
When everything is going, I think it goes back to fundamentals for everyone. And that is start off with a budget. What are you putting away each month? Because no matter where taxes go, we're coming full circle where every one of us, including myself, has to watch our debt, has to watch our spending habits, and we have to live well within our means. I personally have no debt. I live well within my means. I could drive just about any car. I drive a 3-year-old Chevy. So I'm saying we all have to, as a country and individuals, take responsibility, no matter what is passed from a taxation, no matter what the market does. We have to go back to the basics of budgeting ourselves. I know this is not exciting, but think of the generations before us where they practiced this forever. They didn't have the economy that we've enjoyed the last 10, 15 years. So they had to practice these things that I believe are coming full circle again. And with regards to taxation, well, if you can invest in Roth accounts, or you can defer your investments until you're in a lower tax bracket, that's a smart way to go, instead of paying taxes as you go along. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I think it's great advice. I was talking with somebody 3 weeks ago, and you know what, for me, I do a lot of advanced tax planning, but there's one person that we've known for years, and I keep talking to him every single year about reducing his taxes. And he just says, no. And this year he had a new granddaughter, and they're trying to figure out how to put $4,000 into a 529 program for their new granddaughter. So what we did is we talked about tax deferred accounts, all the money that he was getting interest income and getting taxed on that. I said, are you ever going to use it? He goes, no, I'm never going to need it. So we put it in a tax deferred account. And then he had the Roth. So we replace that income by withdrawing it from a Roth, which is tax-free, which put him in a 12% tax bracket. So all the dividends and capital gains were tax-free. So now his taxes are just based off of Social Security. So his taxes went from about $4,000 a year here in California to $16,000. So he just went, oh my God, the IRS is actually going to fund my granddaughter's 529. But more
don't tell your governor that. He may want a piece of the action. I know he's been getting
probably would. He probably needs the money to refinance the money he took to deal with his recall campaign.
Yeah, he's been getting a lot of heat for sure. And, but that's exactly right. And also, depending on whether someone is a W-2 or self-employed person, that's why LLCs are made and for-profit corporations. That's why I said to you earlier that no matter what they do with the tax situation, trust me, tax professionals and attorneys will figure out how to maximize the system for the benefit of their clients. It's not going to be free. So you're either going to pay them or the IRS, so to speak. But I really believe that we'll overcome it. It may be difficult. It may affect our economy in many ways. And I'm ultimately also concerned whether or not companies decide to go elsewhere to conduct business instead of being housed here in America, because I don't blame them. If they could save 10% on their taxes to operate,
Why not?
they would. Exactly. Yes.
I mean, Ireland built a whole economy by reducing taxes down to 2%. So why not? And they built a gigantic manufacturing economy over there for doing that. And I can see that occurring again if corporate taxes go back up. So
right. So I think, Steve, that's really what people need to watch out. But as individuals, we have already touched base on how they can deal with it. If they raise the tax brackets, or if they do away with the standard deduction, there will be other ways that people like the tax deferral accounts and certain ways to invest to mitigate the tax liability situation.
Yeah. Hey, Denny, I want to thank you for being on the show. But you know what? One of the big things I like to do, especially for people like yourself, is give people an opportunity to either, come get information from you. How do they contact you? What's your website? And if they want to see you sing, we can let them know that too.
I do have a website for singing, DennyArtacheBand.com. However, I'm in the greatest broker deal of Peak Brokerage and the greatest RIA firm with independent solutions. What I can say is, can I give my phone number? Am I going to have
Sure.
My number is 561-305-8226. And again,
could you say that one more time?
561-305-8226. I'm with Peak Brokerage Services, and I'm here in beautiful Florida, in Jupiter, Florida. You can email me at my first initial last name, D Artache. That's DARTACHE at PBS Rep, which stands for Peak Brokerage Services. And you know what? It doesn't cost anything to talk. I may not be a fit for everyone, but I love at least educating people so that they can make their decision. I think a big difference of what I do is, and I know that word gets used a lot, holistic, but I really do give advice to my clients of when to take Social Security, what they should do about Medicare, how do they transfer the assets, what happens if they get sick, how can they really invest in the market and maybe get more than 2% with not taking too much risk? Do they understand the difference between a true liquid managed accounts and that not all annuities are terrible and the big bad boogeyman? There's so many of them. You see those commercials that they would never sell an annuity. Well, rich people buy annuities and life insurance because they have their position. I'm not saying you should put all your investments. I believe managed assets, staying liquid, and being a proper risk tolerant model is how typically people should be. But if you're limited in your resources and you don't want to wind up eating cat food, you may want to consider some of those other vehicles to bridge that gap. Because what do you do if we have a bear market in the next 2, 3, or 4 years, and you're counting on that for your income?
Yep.
That's a sobering reality that retirees need to address. Now, I'm not saying you have to do annuities. There are certainly preferred equities that pay nice dividends. My whole point is you should seek help and get many points of view and advice. Or just find someone like me that has all the partners and all in one-stop shop, as they say. And I can sing music for you. That's right. That's
Denny,
right. Either Sinatra or Led Zeppelin or Stevie Ray Vaughan.
I wanted to end with this. I don't know if you know who this is, but Robert Shiller, he won a Nobel Prize for the CAPE ratio in economics. I was at an event at Barclays in New York, and he had a discussion, and he basically, one of the statements he made, and I never forget it, he just says, you know what? There's a lot of different investments out in that world, or in our world. Some could be the perfect thing for some people, but the horrible thing for the others. And a lot of people don't realize that they're just being put into a box sometimes. And you want to find somebody who's going to find an investment that's going to fit them like a glove based off of their unique circumstances.
Right.
So,
And several.
yeah,
and
and
several.
you were just talking about that. So I think that's important. And you know what, I'm going to have to go because our time's up. I want to thank you for being here today. Everybody, Denny
Pleasure,
Artache.
Steve.
And you know what? Maybe we should have you back sometime. You've been a lot of fun. This has gone
I'd
a lot
like to
faster
come
than I thought it would
back,
go.
and you're welcome to come on my radio show if you can get up that early, okay?
Well, you can see why I have less hair. That's why I get up too early. So that's the size of it. All right,
You're all
guys.
right, Steve.
Hey, you
Take care.
be safe. You be healthy. We got to go. You have a great day, Denny. Thanks for being
You
with
too.
us.
Thank you. My
Bye-bye.
pleasure.
Everybody, that was Denny Artache. You know what? Wonderful guy. You know what? Was watching some of the band stuff last night on YouTube. So, go back, check him out, and hopefully we'll see him back again. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.